There are moments in life and in the life of a nation when you stand at the edge of a cliff, wind pressing against your face, heart pounding in your chest, knowing that the next step you take will change everything. It's not just a decision, it's a declaration. And right now, the world is watching one of those moments unfold. India, a land that has carried the weight of centuries, the pain of colonization, the hunger for self-reliance, the quiet determination to rise, has looked at the global table and decided, we will no longer sit where we are told. We will choose our own seat. We will choose our own company. This isn't just politics. This is a heartbeat. This is the sound of a nation saying, we know our worth. It's the echo of generations who dreamed of this kind of sovereignty and the voice of millions who refused to let their country be a pawn in someone else's game. For decades, the relationship between India and America has been one of complicated alliances, moments of cooperation mixed with undercurrents of mistrust. But now, something has shifted. India is no longer content to play by rules written somewhere else. It is cutting the cords that have quietly kept it tethered and turning toward new partnerships with Russia, with China, forging a different path on its own terms. And I want you to understand this. This is not about turning away from one power and running into the arms of another. No, this is about standing on your own 2 feet, lifting your chin and saying, we decide who we are and no one else will define us. When you've been underestimated for long enough, when you've been told your place, your limits, your role, there comes a day when you break that script. India's decision is that day. It's a statement that says, we are not afraid of the unknown, we are not afraid of change, and we are not afraid to lead. Think about it, 1 billion plus voices, a culture older than most empires, an economy pulsing with growth, and yet for too long the world has treated India as if it were still in need of approval. But approval is not what fuels true greatness. Conviction does, and conviction is exactly what you're seeing right now. Some will call this risky, some will call it bold, and some will call it reckless. But history has shown us, the ones who dare to step away from comfort, from predictability, from the safety of someone else's shadow, those are the ones who shape the world we live in tomorrow. When you choose sovereignty over submission, courage over compromise, there will be those who question you. That's the nature of change. But remember, the noise that follows a decision is proof that you've done something that matters. India's shift toward Russia and China isn't just about trade routes and diplomatic papers. It's about reimagining where the center of gravity lies in this world. It's about saying the future will not be dictated from just one corner of the globe. It will be shared, it will be balanced, and it will be fair if we have the courage to make it so. I know this moment feels big because it is big. It's not just a story on the news. It's a sign of a deeper awakening, a refusal to be defined by outdated hierarchies. And here's the truth. Whether you live in Mumbai or New York, in Delhi or Dallas, this moment is a reminder for all of us. You do not have to keep saying yes to a table where you are not respected. You can build your own table. India is building its own table. It is gathering its own allies. And in doing so, it is sending a message to every nation, every leader, every person who has ever felt trapped by someone else's definition of them. You can choose your own story. This is the start of something, a ripple that could become a wave. And as with every great wave, there will be resistance, there will be fear, there will be doubt. But there will also be power, the kind of power that comes when you realize you've been standing tall all along, you just needed to see it. So when you hear that India is cutting ties, don't just think of what's ending, think of what's beginning. Think of the courage it takes to walk away from what's familiar, to embrace what's uncertain, and to trust in your own strength. That's not just a political move, that's a human truth. And in this moment, right here, right now, the world isn't just witnessing a change in alliances, it's witnessing a nation claiming its destiny. You see, decisions like this don't happen in a vacuum. They don't just appear overnight. They are born out of years, decades of watching, learning, enduring, and finally saying, enough. For years, India has played the balancing act, navigating friendships that sometimes felt more like negotiations, partnerships that sometimes carried more strings than benefits. And while there were moments of genuine cooperation, there was always an undercurrent, a quiet truth that India could feel but rarely name out loud. The playing field was never truly level. And here's something you need to understand. When a nation realizes that it has been contributing more than it has been receiving, when it sees its own resources, its own talent, its own innovations being undervalued, there comes a time when pride overtakes politeness. This moment we're living through is about that pride. Not arrogance, not hostility, pride. The kind of pride that comes from knowing your worth. The kind of pride that says, we will not trade our dignity for convenience. Some people hear cutting ties and think it's about anger, but often it's about clarity. When you see the truth clearly, you can no longer pretend you don't. And the truth is this, the world is changing. The centers of power are shifting, and India has decided that it will not be a spectator in this shift. It will be a player.
So when India turns toward Russia, when it opens doors with China, it's not just about replacing one partner with another, it's about creating a new balance. It's about ensuring that no single country can dictate the direction of the world alone. And yes, there are risks. There will be disagreements, cultural differences, economic challenges. But let me tell you something, growth never comes without risk. Every person, every community, every nation that has ever truly transformed itself had to step into the unknown. Right now, India is stepping into the unknown, and here's the most important part, it's doing it with its head high, because when you stop living in fear of losing approval, you gain something much greater, freedom.
There comes a moment in every life, and in the life of every nation, when you are asked one question, who are you really? Not who they say you are, not who you've been told to be, but who you truly are. When all the noise fades and the world is watching to see if you will rise or if you will bow. India is standing at that moment right now. And it is not a quiet moment. No, it is loud. It is the sound of history cracking open, the sound of an old world order shifting under our feet, the sound of a billion hearts beating with the rhythm of something new, something bold, something free. For decades, the world has drawn its maps of power with certain assumptions, that influence flows from west to east, that decisions are made in boardrooms far from Delhi, far from Mumbai, far from the voices of everyday Indian citizens. But the thing about assumptions is they crumble when truth walks into the room. This is not just an economic pivot. This is not just a change of trade partners. This is a nation, the world's largest democracy, looking out over the horizon and saying, we will chart our own course. Now, people will argue, they will debate in newsrooms and write long opinion pieces about what this means. Some will say it's dangerous, some will say it's visionary, and some will try to make it about fear, fear of losing alliances, fear of the unknown, fear of change. But here's what I know, fear is a terrible architect for the future. Courage builds better homes. And what you are witnessing in this moment is courage, not the kind that shouts, not the kind that shows off, but the quiet, steady kind. The courage to stand up from the table, push back the chair and say, we will eat elsewhere. This is the crossroads. And when you stand at a crossroads, you don't just think about where you've been, you think about where you're going. India is looking ahead to a world where power is not concentrated in one hand, but shared among many. A world where dignity is not negotiated, but guaranteed. A world where respect is not given out like favors, but is the birthright of every nation. And here's the lesson for all of us, whether you are a student in Chennai, a farmer in Punjab, or an entrepreneur in Silicon Valley, there will come a time when you must decide if you will keep following the path that's been laid out for you, or if you will dare to create a new one. India is daring right now, in real time, and the whole world is watching. When I think about what India is doing right now, I don't just see it as headlines or policy shifts. I see it as the story of a person who has lived through hard times, been underestimated, been spoken over, and been told time and time again, you can't. I see a young soul who worked harder than anyone else in the room, but still had to fight for a seat at the table. I see someone who carried wounds from the past, wounds not of their own making, yet refused to let those scars define them. And I see a moment right here, right now, where that person has decided, I know my worth, I will no longer shrink myself to fit someone else's comfort. That's what this decision feels like. Not rebellion, but revelation. Not turning away from the world, but turning toward oneself. For years, India has been the diligent partner, shaking hands, keeping peace, honoring agreements. But even the most patient heart knows when it's being taken for granted. And when that moment comes, when you've given enough, when you've proven yourself more times than you can count, there's a quiet shift inside you. You stop asking for permission and you start claiming your place. That's where India is today. It's not just cutting ties with America to lean on Russia and China. It's saying, I will stand where I choose to stand, not where I am told to stand. It's not chasing approval. It's not seeking validation. It's acting from a place of self-respect. And here's the truth. That's a lesson every single one of us can take into our own lives. Because we all have relationships, personal, professional, even national, where we've stayed too long, hoping things would change, giving more than we were getting back. And when you finally choose yourself, when you finally say enough, that's not selfishness, that's liberation. India's story right now is a mirror. It's showing us that there is power in knowing your value, that there is dignity in walking away, and that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is choose you. You cannot understand the power of this moment without understanding the shadow that stretches behind it. Because history, real lived history, is not just dates in a textbook. It's not dusty pages or faded photographs. It's alive. It moves through the air we breathe, through the choices we make, through the dreams we dare to dream. And India knows this better than most. This is a country whose soil has felt the footsteps of empires, some welcomed, many not. It is a land that has been claimed, carved up, and commanded by outsiders who believed they could dictate its destiny. For centuries, India's voice was drowned out by the voices of those who thought they knew better. Colonialism wasn't just about borders and flags, it was about control. It was about taking the wealth of a nation, not just the gold, not just the spices, not just the textiles, but the wealth of self-belief. It was about teaching a people to second-guess themselves, to feel small in the shadow of someone else's authority. That kind of wound doesn't heal in a generation. It lingers. It's passed down like a secret, unspoken but felt. When independence finally came in 1947, it wasn't a ribbon-cutting ceremony. It was a rebirth. But as with any birth, there was pain, there was blood, there was sacrifice. And even after the chains were cut, the echoes of those chains could still be heard in trade agreements, in global politics, in the subtle but constant reminder that the world's superpowers were still looking at India as a junior partner, not an equal. That's why this moment matters so much, because when India says today we will choose our own alliances, it is not speaking only for 2025. It is speaking for the centuries when it could not choose. It is speaking for the millions who dreamed of freedom but never lived to see it. It is speaking for the farmers, the teachers, the workers, the artists who built this nation from the ground up after independence, not with the resources of a superpower, but with the grit of a survivor. And here's what we need to understand. Freedom is not something you win once, it's something you defend every day. Every generation has to claim it again in their own way. For India, cutting certain ties and forging new ones is not just strategy, it is an act of defense, defending the right to self-determination, to equality on the global stage, to dignity that does not need to be granted because it is already inherent. Now this choice, to lean toward Russia and China, to reshape its place in the world order, will not please everyone. It will rattle cages. It will make headlines that paint it as defiance, even as betrayal. But history teaches us that any move toward true independence will be met with resistance from those who benefit from the old order. That was true when Gandhi marched to the sea to make salt. That was true when colonial rule was challenged, and it's true now. But here's the thing, India is no longer afraid of rattling cages, because cages are for the ones who want to keep you in. And when you know your strength, when you remember who you are, you don't ask the cage for permission to leave. You walk out. This is where history and the present collide, in a choice that says we will no longer be bound by arrangements that do not serve us. We will no longer be told that our prosperity must fit into someone else's blueprint. We will no longer measure our worth against the approval of a single nation or alliance. And this is bigger than India. This is about the global South, the nations that have often been treated as afterthoughts in the grand game of geopolitics. When India stands tall, it gives others permission to stand tall too. When India says, we will not be defined by the West alone, it whispers to Africa, to Southeast Asia, to Latin America, you don't have to either. It's the same lesson we learn in our personal lives. When one person in a family breaks a cycle, it shows the others that it's possible. When one person says, this is not the only way things can be, the whole room changes. Right now, India's changing the room. And the most powerful part, it's doing it without apology. Because apology belongs to those who have done wrong, and choosing your own path is never wrong. This is why the weight of history is not something to fear, it is something to carry with pride. Because every time you take a step forward, you are walking with the footsteps of those who came before you. Every time you lift your head, you are lifting it for the ones who could not. And every time you choose your own destiny, you are proving to the world that history may shape you, but it does not own you. India's decision today is not the end of its history, it is the continuation of it. A new chapter written in its own handwriting, with its own ink, on its own paper. And in the years to come, when people look back on this moment, they won't just see a shift in foreign policy, they'll see a statement of identity. They'll see a nation that remembered its past, but refused to be trapped by it. They'll see the moment when history's weight became history's strength. Because here's the truth, when you stand tall in the present, you honor the past, and you open the door to a future that is truly yours. There's a truth I've learned both in life and in watching the world. You cannot live fully free if your choices are controlled by someone else's approval. That's not freedom. That's permission. And permission can be taken away. What India is declaring right now is simple, but it is profound. We will no longer seek permission to stand in our own light. That is what sovereignty looks like. Not the absence of relationships, but the presence of self-respect in those relationships. It is the difference between being invited to the table and owning the table you sit at. For too long, the global order has operated on an unspoken hierarchy, where some voices carry more weight, where some nations are expected to follow while others lead. And when you've been placed in the follower column long enough, you start to see the lines for what they are, and you start erasing them. That's what India is doing. Choosing sovereignty over submission doesn't mean isolation. It doesn't mean closing doors. It means standing on your own foundation when you walk through those doors. It means saying, we will work with you, but not beneath you. It means knowing that partnership is not service, and cooperation is not obedience, and courage, the kind we're seeing now, is not the absence of fear. Let's be honest, stepping away from a long-standing ally is risky. It has consequences. It brings uncertainty. But courage isn't about waiting until you're fearless to act. Courage is about acting while the fear is still in the room, because you know the truth in your heart outweighs the risk in your mind. There will be voices that say, why rock the boat? Why not stay where it's comfortable? Why not compromise? And yes, compromise has its place when it's mutual, when it's balanced, when it's fair. But compromise that requires you to shrink yourself is not compromise at all. It's surrender. India is choosing not to surrender. Not its economic independence, not its political dignity, not its role in shaping the future. And that choice sends ripples across the world because courage is contagious. Think about the message this sends to smaller nations, to developing economies, to countries that have been told for decades that they must align themselves with a single power or risk being left behind. But India is showing them another way, a way where you can walk with multiple partners, trade with multiple allies, and still keep your own compass. And that's a lesson for our personal lives too. How many times have we stayed in a situation, a job, a relationship, a friendship, because we feared what would happen if we left? How many times have we compromised until we no longer recognized ourselves? And how many times have we learned after we finally walked away that our strength was bigger than our fear? This is India's walk-away moment, not a walk away from the world, but a walk toward itself. And in that walk is a message for everyone watching. The moment you stop asking, will they still like me if I choose myself, is the moment you become truly free. Sovereignty is not about standing alone. It's about standing grounded. Courage is not about never bending. It's about knowing where you will bend and where you will not break. And compromise, it's only noble when it doesn't cost you your soul. Today, India is telling the world, our soul is not for sale. Our dignity is not negotiable. Our future will not be signed away for the sake of comfort. That is sovereignty. That is courage. That is what it looks like to choose the harder road because it leads to higher ground. And years from now, when the dust of this moment has settled, when the debates are over and the history books are written, one thing will be clear. India did not just make a political choice, it made a human one. It chose courage over compromise, and that is a choice that will always echo louder than fear. We are not just living through headlines, we are living through history. And the thing about history is you never fully realize you're in it until you look back years later and say, that was the moment everything changed. This is one of those moments when a nation as vast, as complex, as deeply rooted as India shifts its stance. The ripple is felt far beyond its borders. It reaches the markets of Europe, the boardrooms of America, the trading ports of Asia, the halls of power in Africa. It whispers into the ears of leaders everywhere, pay attention. The ground is moving beneath your feet. And it's not just moving because of economics or politics. It's moving because of something far more powerful, belief. Belief in the right to chart your own course. Belief that dignity is not a luxury, but a necessity. Belief that the future will not be shaped by the same tired rules of the past, but by those bold enough to rewrite them. Make no mistake, this decision will be tested. There will be trials. There will be attempts to pull India back into the old patterns, the old hierarchies, the old dependencies. But when a door to the future has been opened, it's almost impossible to close it again. And for those who fear change, let me tell you something. Change is coming whether you fear it or not. The question is not if it will come, but who will lead it. And India is making it clear it will not be dragged into the future by someone else. It will walk there on its own feet, with its own stride, carrying its own vision. What happens next? That is the part that should excite you and challenge you, because the choices being made today will shape not just India's path, but the path of the entire global South. Will we see new trade corridors, new defense alliances, new cultural exchanges that bypass the old gatekeepers? Possibly. And each of those changes will carry with it a single undeniable truth. The center of power in this world is no longer fixed. The world is not tilting away from one nation toward another. It's leveling. And in that leveling, we are all being asked a question. Will we cling to what was, or will we help build what can be? India has answered loudly, clearly, without hesitation. It will build, it will risk, it will lead. And in doing so, it is inviting the rest of the world, especially those long told to wait their turn, to step forward too. And maybe that's the real power of this moment. Not the trade agreements, not the diplomatic headlines, but the inspiration it carries. Because when one nation decides to live by its own definition, it gives others permission to do the same. So as we stand here, watching the sun rise on this new chapter, remember, we're not just witnesses to change, we're participants in it. And one day, when history looks back, it won't just say India turned toward Russia and China. It will say India turned toward itself, and in doing so, it turned a page for the world. This is not the end of a relationship. This is the beginning of a revolution, one not fought with weapons, but with choices. Choices that declare, we are here, we are ready, and we will not be told who to be. The next chapter is being written right now, and the ink is courage.